Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to today's Sunday's edition of Hotline Live. Myself, Keith Jackson. As you see, I'm joined by Fraser Wilson. Fraser, just another remarkable weekend of Scottish top-flight football, isn't it? Everywhere you look, there's a drama, there's a surprise, there's a result that people didn't see coming. We'll talk through. I think you were at Ibrox yesterday. Obviously, have to take a deep dive into that later on. Celtic losing at St Johnstone today, and we'll be joined in a minute, hopefully, by Andy Newport, who's at Tynecastle. For that was a massive result for Dundee United, and it leaves Hearts in a really difficult position going into the last weekend, doesn't it? Because there's every chance they finish in the bottom six now.
Absolutely, Keith. I hinted at this on what day last week were we talking about?
They all merge into one, mate.
And I said, I said I love the split. I would not want to lose the split for this very reason. Now, I pinpointed this game today, Dundee United Hearts, as being probably the biggest game of the weekend for this reason. What I didn't bank on was Motherwell and St Mirren both blowing it yesterday, and then basically leaving it up to Hearts to go and win at home today to secure the top six place with a week to go. Of course, the three teams that had to win to secure that top six or to give themselves a chance at top six all got beat this weekend. So it's back to where we were for the last game before the split next week. It's brilliant. I mean, next week Hearts go to Motherwell, so that could be winner takes all if St Mirren blow it against
Ross County.
So honestly, this split, despite the fact that we very rarely have a title race, let's be brutally honest about it, in the Scottish Premiership, the split gives us so many other talking points right up to the final day of the season. I mean, we've not even touched on the relegation fight, but St Johnstone have blown that open again today. I mean, there's just little battles going on all over the place. It's brilliant.
They've thrown themselves a lifeline, I guess. I think the way the results went yesterday, Fraser, St Johnstone went into that game today knowing that they had to get a freakish result against Celtic to have any chance, even an outside chance of staying up. But they managed it, and by the way, they were excellent. And we'll come to that game later. But again, and we did talk about the split, and there's obviously this appetite for some sort of reconstruction of Scottish football. I'm looking at it and going, if it's not broke, why we try to fix it? What is it exactly we're trying to fix? Everywhere you look right now, there's a game with something on it in Scotland's top flight, and it's going to be the same next weekend. It's sort of I'm wondering what the problem is that we're trying to fix here.
I totally agree, Keith. I think the only thing, maybe the bigger clubs are wanting less games, which apparently the 14 teams suggestion brings. Oh no, it was a 10. The 10 team suggestion brings 2 less games, but we've been
the 10. But so does the 14 if they go to 14, and then you go top 6, bottom 8. I think you'll get 2 less games. I think it's a 36 game season. But why I don't know why we need to tamper with it, but it seems to me all we're doing is making room, and maybe I'm not totally against the idea of making room for 2 clubs from the Championship, but I just like what we've got. I like the way it looks, and everywhere, as I said, you look the length of that division, you're right, Celtic might be stuttering towards the finishing line, but they've won it out the park. But everywhere else, from third down, there's loads to play for.
I think sometimes as a nation we look to change for change's sake, don't we? It has been 25 years of this set up. Maybe some folk are getting a little bored of it.
I think it might be that, change for change's sake.
But look, if we went back to 10, they would very quickly realise that's far more stale than what we've got at the moment.
Well, that's dead. That already seems dead in the water, Fraser, thankfully.
Not happening, thank goodness. 14, look, it might be interesting for a season or 2, but we'd end up sort of back where we are right now. What was really the point? And I don't like the fact that a split having a top 6 and a bottom 8. It's a bit discombobulated for me.
A bit unbalanced, isn't it?
I honestly think the status quo is the fairest for everybody. Everyone gets at least 3 cracks at the Old Firm. So for the teams at the bottom of the league needing the finances, they get at least 3 cracks at the Old Firm. And then, as we've spoken about, you've got sub-stories popping up all over the place, whether it's right this stage trying to make the top 6 because whoever finishes 7th are probably going to miss out on the chance of battling for Europe by a point or maybe goal difference. Then when the split comes in, you've got the battle for those Euro spots, and at the other end, we could have 6 teams fighting to avoid relegation in the last 5 seasons.
That's brilliant.
We want
brilliant stories all over the place.
Aye,
there's Marzuno, a regular contributor on YouTube. He's saying people seem to be liking the 14 with a 6-8 split. It does seem to be getting a bit of traction, but again, I come back to it, Fraz, why change? Why change? That this thing is perfectly set up just now.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how it works, but I don't think it would, one, be a great deal different, and two, I'd be a bit worried that, as you say, that imbalance became a real problem.
Well, it's more than that as well, because if you're going to do a 14-team 6-8 split, I think you have to split after 26 games.
Doesn't seem,
and that seems to me that seems to me a bit. You know, I like the way it's built just now. That it's 5 games. You get 5 games after the split. It feels as if you're kind of carving up 2 different leagues at that point, midway through a campaign. And you've seen. I mean, we're talking about Hearts right now, and we'll go on to talk a wee bit more about them. But Hearts are, you know, they were down the bottom of the league. Hibs were down the bottom of the league at one point. Hibs have look at, you know, they're right in the mix now for a 3rd place finish. Hearts, I've got 1 game to determine whether or not they're going to be top 6 or bottom 6. So I think if you draw a line through the middle of a league, just 26 games in, I think it's a bit too soon as well. I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like the idea.
I totally agree. God, I couldn't agree more, Keith. It's not often we totally agree.
We're not going to have a fight then, are we?
No, I've changed the subject. I agree. Look, I think the bottom line is I've convinced myself, thinking about it in the last 7 days or however long this story's been dragging on, that the status quo, in terms of top flight, the status quo is the best way to go forward. Maybe below that, maybe we could increase the size of the championship and then maybe go into regionalised leagues for the lower levels. I don't know, that's a different argument altogether. But in terms of our top division, for the number of games, for the competition and excitement and fairness, I think the status quo is as good as we're going to get.
There's Philip Lynn on YouTube. We need a 16-team league.
Why?
I don't know. If you go 16, you've got a problem because you're probably looking at, 30 fixtures?
That's it, aye.
And that would mean if you were doing it 30 fixtures, you're losing 2 Old Firm matches, and the broadcasters will torpedo that right away. Yep. Look, while we're waiting for Andy Newport to join us from Tynecastle, let's talk just for a minute or so about Hearts and Neil Critchley, because it seems to me he's getting a bit of blowback from the Hearts supporters, and there's this theory that he can't win big games, the games that really matter. He can't win them. Do you think there's anything in that, Fraser?
There is. He's going to have to blow that apart. Is it the closest he's come to a big result in his how long's it been? October. That's been half a year now. 6 months. The closest he's come to a big result was beating Dundee United at Tannadice. I think it was around about January. That was a great result. But other than that, they keep blowing it against Rangers and Celtic. They've not really laid a glove in Celtic.
And they've lost the bragging rights in their own backyard.
Oh, badly. The last 2, they've been well beaten by Hibs on their own at Tynecastle and over at Easter Road. They drew the first one at Easter Road when Critchley had just come in the door. So he's not laid the glove really on Hibs either. Aberdeen, two draws home and away to Aberdeen. So they've not. That 1 win against Dundee United is the only win they've had against a fellow top 6 side this season, and that needs to change if they've got any chance of qualifying for Europe. Look, there's another stat that since they came in, because remember he took over after 8 games and only had 2 points, 2 draws from the first 8 games. So if there was a league table from when Neil Critchley came in, I think they're still sitting in the top 5. So he's winning the games he sort of expected to win. But you know as well as anyone, Keith, in this season, I've been at Tynecastle a lot this season. The Edinburgh Derby, the last game, the Euro campaign where they blew it against Petro Club, the Men's Petro Club, it can be really toxic. Bad results bring a really toxic reaction for that Tynecastle support. And I heard that again on the telly today at the end of the Dundee United game. That was another chance missed and the boos.
Not happy.
No, so
Andy, you were Andy Newport joins us from Tynecastle. Andy, obviously you were at the game. We're just saying that there seems to be a bit of pushback, blowback towards Neil Critchley now, in this suggestion that he can't win the games that matter. He's going to have to turn that around in the Scottish Cup semi-final, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, like, this was a game that was in their hands today. They go, they win, they get that top 6 place nailed down. They can start looking up the table. They can start looking to put pressure on Dundee United ahead of them, maybe qualify for Europe through the league. But now it's really looking like the Scottish Cup's are their only chance. So it's obviously a huge task for them to do that. But yeah, just what Fraser's saying there was at the end of the game, it was a real anger. I think Nick Walsh got some of the anger, obviously, the decision to send off James Wilson.
What did we make of that, by the way?
I think it's misplaced. I think if you see it back, he catches Lucas Stevenson sort of high up in his shin. I think, maybe the days of getting away with those kind of challenges are long gone. I think in 2025, if you connect with somebody's shin half up their leg, then you're going to get a red card. So yes, it's a tough one for the young kid. He's only 19. 18. His first red card of his career. It's a sore one. He's going to learn it. I mean, and it cost his team today. That's the thing that will hurt him the most. There's no doubt, because Hearts were on top. Obviously, the scoring goals has been their issue all season, but they were creating, and that all kind of started to sort of fade away after the red card. Dundee United sort of grew in confidence, and obviously won it with an absolutely fantastic header for Sam Dalby. So they can be pleased with their day's work, but yeah, it's a sore one for young James Wilson.
Andy, I know you'll need to get back across the M8 car park at some point, but humour me while you're still there. Hearts obviously go to Motherwell now next weekend. We're just discussing this, the top 12 as it stands. There's great games everywhere, Andy. Yeah. And next weekend is perfectly set up. Hearts go to Motherwell. Could be a winner takes all in that match, with St Mirren at home to Ross County, as they try and thrash out who's going to get the 6th place. But the worry for Hearts, and if this is true about Neil Critchley and can't seem to get over the line in a big game, one that really matters, that'd be a concern, because if Hearts go into that bottom 6, they're only 5 points clear of the relegation playoff place.
Yeah,
and if they've got a problem winning games that matter, that could become really concerning.
I mean, it was quite funny, just the narrative coming in, because if you look at the form, I mean, I think Dundee United had only won 3 of their 12 coming in, whereas Hearts had only lost 3 since the turn of the year. But as you say, it's those big games, so it kind of feels like Critchley's the guy facing a bit of scrutiny, where Jim Goodwin's, obviously they did the majority of their good work at the sort of front end of the season, but they're the ones that are there now, safely secure in the top 6, where Hearts are the team that have got it all to play for, all to prove. So yeah, I mean, listen, it's one of these ones. As soon as you can get a big result, you can put that narrative to bed, but you can't do that until you do it. So it has to, listen, if they fail, having put themselves in such a good position after that bad start, if they fail to make the top 6, then I think they'll just feel like it's been a sort of an opportunity missed, because they had recovered well, and they have been performing well, but it's these big sort of sliding doors moments that are costing them right now. The split second tackle changes the game. Couple of big opportunities missed early on, and those are the very fine margins that are going against them right now.
I was going to say, Andy, I actually thought the first half performance was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I thought some of the football they played in the first half was really nice on the eye, some great moves, just seemed to break down in the penalty box. But they looked at that point as if they were fairly comfortable in the match.
Yeah, they were in charge. There was no doubt. I mean, I think up until the sending off, I don't think Dundee United had a shot on target. I think they had a free kick for Ryan Strain that sort of cleared the bar by about half a foot, but other than that, Craig Gordon had been virtually a spectator. So I think that's again the frustrating thing. This one moment has flipped an entire game in its head, and it's, as I say, it's cost Neil Critchley 3 points today, and if it could be extra costly next week if they can't go to Motherwell and get that big result that they need.
Yeah, big times ahead for Hearts, big times, and you get the feeling it's going to define the season. Finish top 6 and get to the Scottish Cup final, happy days. If it goes the other way around, then I think Neil Critchley's going to come under real pressure, real scrutiny between now and over the summer.
As you say, I mean, like where the team was at the points this season, to get the top 6 and make a Scottish Cup final would be a fantastic result. But if you then go and let that opportunity slip, having got yourself so close, then that's going to feel like a big blow. That's going to feel like they've not done themselves justice. All that hard work will end up being for nothing. But yeah, he's as you say, there is this narrative building. He now needs to address it. They've got a 90-minute shootout next week. If he can get over the line with that one, then yeah, it'll be job done. Otherwise, he's got some big questions to ask.
Brilliant, Andy. Listen, thanks for jumping on, and safe home.
Thanks, mate. Cheers, boys.
All right, man.
Yeah, Randy.
Aye, so Fraser, so that was the kind of later kick-off today. The earlier kick-off was at McDiarmid Park, and again, a result that very few people would have seen coming. How could you?
Sensational, wasn't it? Literally. I mean, complete opposite. We'll get on this later, but I went to Ibrox yesterday expecting Hibs to win, which they did. But that today, I did not see.
You expected Hibs to win yesterday?
Yeah, Hibs are great at the moment.
They are.
Even their 2-0 defeat to Celtic in the Scottish Cup, they still mopped up so much pressure really, really well. They just know how to defend. But I suppose we'll get to that later. St Johnstone, I thought Celtic would steamroll them. I have to be honest. I think St Johnstone, when they come up against Celtic, I felt, and this is maybe a bit cruel, but they get found out for the level that some of their players are at. That sounds terribly harsh. And today they proved me wrong big time. I just thought they had no way of stopping that Celtic front line when I saw the teams drop.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, that result today, if anything today is going to galvanise a team in a relegation fight, a great escape fight, and remember they did it last season under Craig Levein, it's that has really got me thinking now, and it'll have Ross County and Dundee fans thinking, hang on a minute, there's a long way to go yet to avoid that bottom spot.
What's interesting, and we'll go. I caught up with Michael Gannon after the match, Fraser, for his verdict from McDiarmid Park. What I found really interesting, most interesting of all, and by the way, St Johnstone were terrific and they really deserved their victory today. Brendan Rodgers had a bit of a sidewinder at his players after it, which is quite unusual. He seems to be digging him out for some sort of attitude problem. Here, Ross McCormick joins us with a comment on YouTube. Celtic's mentality the last few weeks have been, we just need to turn up. This needs to change before next season. That's exactly the point that Brendan Rodgers appear to be making. Look, why don't we just cut and we'll catch up? Because obviously Mick caught up with Brendan Rodgers after the match.
Yeah.
Mick, delighted to have you on. Obviously do this as a pre-record because you'll need to get back down the road. Can we start at the end? Because Brendan Rodgers wasn't sparing any lashes in the post-match interviews that certainly I saw. What about, how was he with you guys?
No, he was, he didn't hold back. I mean, listen, I think there's a lot of things today, obviously the result and performance that he didn't like what he saw on the pitch. And I think he accused these players of being too comfortable, a bit too cosy in their position. Listen, they're 13 points clear. Obviously, Rangers dropped points yesterday.
Yeah.
I think you get the sense that we're kind of turning up here just expecting to win. It didn't work out that way. So he kind of let them know. Because, I mean, he's not a big man for kind of ranting and raving, but he admitted himself. He actually said the phrase he was angry and he was trying to contain his anger. He said the word he used was comfortable. He doesn't want to see players comfortable. He doesn't want to see them kind of stuttering towards the finishing line. So he gave them a bit of a blast. I think he's seen things in recent weeks he's not particularly been too keen on. I mean, I think that's the start of 2025. A few things keeping in, a few players that might not be used to it, who have dipped big time. And he's given them a bit of a blast, to be fair.
That's what he was referring to, Mike. He said it didn't even come as a surprise to him. He's seen it coming. There's something that's not pleasing him about this Celtic squad at the minute.
Well, I think he saw it at Ibrox, the game. I think he maybe thought that the gap perhaps brought in some complacency. Then we saw it at Hibs, at Easter Road, against Rangers again at Parkhead, losing that game, and then again today. So they've been having not lost a game for I don't know, now on a year or something like that. Then they go and lose 3 in quick succession. So or 4, sorry, since Christmas. So I think there has been some warning signs that. Listen, I think you've got to caveat that. Listen, they've done the hard work to get to the position they're in, and they're just about there. And it just seems to be that as the finish line's approaching, they are starting to kind of to splutter their way across the line.
See, I've already put them down for the treble, Mick. But you do wonder.
We've got St Johnstone in the semi-final, by the way, who's done a job on them. Listen, I thought St Johnstone. Listen, you got to say St Johnstone were terrific today. They were
excellent.
They were brilliant, and they get the goal and you think it's too early. That's far too early to score against Celtic. But listen, they dug in, they were brave, quite bold at times, and they did the kind of thing you need to do against Celtic to get a result. They were heroic in some last gasp tackles. The goalies pulled off some brilliant saves late on, and it was like, do you want? They deserved it. They put in enough effort to deserve the win. They could have turned up feeling sorry for themselves. Results yesterday were a disaster for them. Every result went against them.
Actually, looked as if it put fire into them, didn't it? The kind of realisation after yesterday's results, they had to try and get 3 points today.
Yeah, and listen, and fair play to them. And listen, this game is a real ominous one for them. Celtic have won 15 games in the bounce up here. They scored 48 goals coming here. And the last time was at 6-0. It was on 12. So to do that in that circumstances, fair play to them. But in terms of Celtic, they're just a bit in danger of making it the kind of the dullest, lowest, keyest, most miserable treble in history. I mean, this is the threat. They turned up for a party against Rangers. Didn't happen. Turned up here they took 3 stands here, thinking this was going to be the title decider. Never happened. Now they've got a game against Kilmarnock, which has been moved for TV to be a title party. That's postponed. I mean, they'll get over the line. It's only not two more wins away, but then they're still. I mean, the cup is no longer, I think, an absolute certainty, because the way they're playing at times, they're capable of throwing in these performances that are dangerous. I mean, like say, you look at Hearts and Aberdeen. I mean, St Johnstone in the semi-final is not a gimme anymore. You still fancy them, obviously, to raise their game, but excuse me, but they're definitely not firing all cylinders at the moment.
Who do you think in particular, Mick? I mean, a lot's been made of Nicholas Cooten. He has sort of dropped off a cliff a little bit, hasn't he?
He has. I mean, I thought he played well against Hearts last week. But they not happening. I mean, they had a chance in the first half. He beat 2 men in the flank, cut inside, and you think this is his chance to do. He did first half of the season, and he shanked it about 40 yards wide.
Nearly put it into the tape.
Excuse me, shanked it 40 yards wide. And that summed it up since Christmas, or since January. Arnie Engels, not great again. Didn't get impose himself in the game. Jeffrey Schlupp had a shocker. He kicked for the goal. Didn't play great. Hooked as well. So there's plenty of guys that were underperforming. I think there's a few going off the boil.
Do you think there's an opportunity here for Greg Taylor? It did look as if we might have seen the end for Greg Taylor, that was just going to get phased out between now and the end of the season. But does that give him a wee opportunity, a wee chink of light to get himself back into the team for the big finale?
I would think so, yeah, because I think he was certainly more lively. He was more lively when he came off the bench and said they were better in the second half. I still don't think they look particularly like scoring right enough. I mean, I know he had a few chances, the goals, a few saves. But
James Forrest has got to score his at the back post, man.
I had to score that one. There's another one, I think, across the face when Yang just outside Jota.
And Hattati's rattled the post, didn't he?
Hattati blazed one over from 12 yards. They should have hit the back of the net with that one as well. So yeah, you could add up with chances like that. But it wasn't a particularly emphatic performance for Celtic. I think they need a bit more from Engels, need a bit more from Kuhn. I say, even like guys like Adelaide on the bench didn't really have any impact at all. At some point, he's going to have to start producing the goods. I thought Yang was quite lively when he came off the bench. At least try to make things happen until you get yourself kind of hurt. I think Arthur Johnson's had a bit of dip in form in recent weeks. Maybe that was due because he's been playing so much a high standard all season. Maybe he can be forgiven for having a little bit of a dip. But yeah,
he looks a bit tired, doesn't he?
Yeah, but you're now adding in 3, 4, 5 players that are not at it, and that shows across the board. If you get 5 players that are not quite performing at their best, it's going to become a bit of a struggle. And then guys in Maida today had a quiet game, and that happens. The impacts felt throughout the team. So, there is work to be done. It was interesting at the end. See, after the final whistle went, and after his wee rant in the press room, Rodgers reappeared on the pitch. He had a bit of word with the groundsman. I think he was moaning about the park, but then he kind of went a wander across the park on his own and stood out there for a good 5-10 minutes on his own in the middle of the pitch. The place is empty. a man alone with his thoughts. It was a kind of interesting kind of scene. He's also got a lot in his mind.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite surprised. We'll come back to where we started. I was quite surprised about his reaction after the game, Mick, because it pointed to something underlying. You know, not just dismissing today as an off day and a bad day at the office. He seemed to be pointing to something that's clearly under his skin a little bit.
Well, listen, he's not a guy that wastes a word in a press conference.
No.
You know what he's like? He doesn't waste a word. I mean, everything he says is measured and well thought out. I mean, I think this up here last year, if you remember, at half-time, he let rip at half-time. He said after the game, it's the angriest he's ever been. He was certainly more angry today. And this is them with a 13-point lead. I think he just doesn't want complacency. He doesn't want his players to get too cosy. So this is a wee rocket he's fired across them to get them going for this last wee push. Because like he said, the title isn't won yet. The cup isn't won yet. There's still work to be done. He just doesn't want to see them freewheeling to the finishing line.
Yeah, I think that's what he was talking about when he was talking about players that need to learn that, you know, you need to be on it week in, week out at Celtic. You can't just start coasting, even when you're sitting 13 points clear at the top of the table.
I think we've seen Celtic in recent, obviously they won 12 out of 13 or 13 out of 14 titles, whatever it is. And they've seen years when they've been miles ahead and they've won the league and then dropped off and lost a few games. It kind of looks like that just now, but they haven't got to the finish line yet. So it's almost like they've had that wee drop off. You've seen them losing kind of old firm games after they've won a title and all that kind of thing. It's only natural, but it seems to have happened a wee bit earlier. I think there is a creeping sensation that they think the job's done. And listen, it is probably done. That's the thing. It can't really be easy to get that edge when there's not really any jeopardy. Because listen, I mean, still the job done. When Rangers dropped points yesterday, it's like they've got to go up to Todge next week. They could lose again next Sunday as well. It's like it's almost not really any kind of danger attached to these games for Celtic.
No, you're right.
They still need to get it done, and they need to try and ensure it's not a kind of miserable stagger to the finishing line. I mean, they packed out these three stands thinking it's going to be a kind of a bit of styling show last time, and it never really happened. So they have to get themselves G'd up again for the final kind of push.
Mick, thank you very much for joining us. We'll let you get back down the road and we'll catch you through the week.
I'll go and weave through all the tractors back down the road here.
Right, mate. Thanks, Mick. Interesting, isn't it, Fraser? Complacency. Is that potentially going to be Celtic's Achilles heel? I don't personally think so, but I keep coming back to it. Brendan Rodgers' comments after the game suggest that he is concerned that there is an underlying issue.
He's very intelligent with what he says at the right time, isn't he? He's really good, Brendan Rodgers, administering a short, sharp shot to his players, you know, at the right moment. This is a jab. And clearly he was correct to say what he said. If anyone in that team thinks they're coasting, then they don't deserve to be at Celtic, basically. But that's scathing for a footballer to be accused. I think he used the words of some folk turning up hoping for an easy game, an easy afternoon. That's pretty scathing. Any professional footballer, Celtic fans will tell you, especially at Celtic, every time they pull on that shirt, they should be ready to sweat blood for the cause. And if that's not the case, like it sounded for maybe a couple, 2 or 3 today, then you see what happens. And you see the kind of reaction you get for a manager that demands perfection every time you step on the park, or at least, if not perfection, at least 100% effort. And it sounds like he seriously doubted he got that for some of his players today.
You know, I wonder if part of this is, Fraser, as we've been discussing about the 12 and the reconstruction and all the rest of it, the first and second place, these issues are settled. and you wonder if that's feeding into, and I think Brendan Rodgers has mentioned it. He mentioned it after the last loss in the Old Firm match at Celtic Park, that perhaps, Celtic's security at the top of the table has fed into some of the performances. You wonder if the same thing's happening at Rangers. We will come round to that because you were at Ibrox yesterday. But is there something in that? Are they almost clocked off?
So look, you get players. Every player's got a different mentality here. Keith, see me or you. See if I played in front of 100 fans, I thought I was 100 people with eyes on me. As soon as I stepped on the park, I didn't know what to embarrass myself. Celtic players weren't just playing in front of 8,000-9,000 at McDiarmid Park. They had millions watching on TV. Why would you go onto a pitch knowing you had millions of eyes on you I think you can maybe coast along. I do not understand that mentality in players, but I think you're right. There must be a couple with that mentality that they maybe don't even realise it. But they're stepping on a part and subconsciously maybe just dipping out of 50-50. Maybe just not running as hard as it should be to shut somebody down, stopping a cross, all these little things that lead to goals or making goals at the other end. Looking at substitutions today, you could jump to the conclusion is pointing fingers at Jeffrey Sloop, who's new in the building and maybe needs a jab, and Nicholas Kuhn, who he spoke to Mick there, whose form has fallen off a cliff. They were both replaced at half-time, so he clearly wasn't happy with their performances. But to get back to your question, it seems to be a fair accusation that some of them have maybe clocked off for the league season and think the title's wrapped up, which yeah, it is. But every time you're playing in front of paying punters, you need to perform. Yeah. It's an entertainment sport, so they need to go and entertain the millions that are watching them.
Well, I'm conscious of the fact that we can't dwell too much on, Celtic's issues, because if Celtic thinks that Brendan Rodgers thinks he's got problems right now, he should try being Barry Ferguson. Obviously, you were at Ibrox, Fraser, as we mentioned, and we talked about Brendan Rodgers' reaction after that result and performance today. Barry Ferguson was an angry man yesterday evening, wasn't he?
Well, to quote Barry, God, where do I start? His first words, thought, oh, here we go. Wasn't happy. That's putting it mildly. He was emotional. He just managed to keep himself in check. There was one moment I thought he was going to throw some players right under the bus publicly, and he threw himself back in. But I think reading between the lines, you can guess who's not going to feature on Thursday unless he changes his mind.
Go on.
I'd be amazed if Jack Butland starts. Amazed. And that is the biggest call he's got. This time last year, he was Rangers' most valuable player, both in terms of winning games and also potential transfers. The guy has been, and I still firmly believe, is a class act, but his confidence is shot. I mean, the goal we conceded at Dundee last week was utterly baffling. I cannot understand how that's come back off his chest. Can't. And then 8 minutes in yesterday, a straightforward 25-yard strike, well struck by Dylan Levitt, through a ruck of bodies, but he just needs to flop down on it, and it's squirmed underneath him. And I'm surprised that I was still surprised. He's going through a spell where he just can't seem to do right, and after that, there was a series of pass backs where he looked a bag of jaggies, and that fed through the fans again, and that's not what you're needing at Ibrox right now. It's a difficult place to sit and do your work as a journalist right now, because it can get so toxic. But to be honest, by the end, the home section of the stadium were empty again by the end, which said it all. It was just like that Mirren game that did for Philip Clement. The second goal, 2-0 after 70 minutes, exactly the same, and the stands cleared rapid, to the point you could hear Barry Ferguson's name ringing, echoing round the stadium, and it was the Hibs fans that were singing it, mocking the hosts.
Interesting, isn't it? Right, couple of things. First of all, you're going to drop Jack Butland if you're Barry Ferguson. That's for Athletic Bilbao come to Ibrox on Thursday night. Place in the last four of the Europa League up for grabs. You think he's going to bin his goalkeeper?
It's so difficult, isn't it? Jack Butland is kind of a class act. He just looks the part, but he's not playing the part at the moment. Liam Kelly must be thinking, this is my chance. Liam Kelly's a good Scottish Premiership goalie, very good Scottish Premiership goalie. Oh, Jack Butland was so good against Fenerbahce, home and away, and I think almost single-handedly got Rangers through when they, don't swear, but they capitulated at Ibrox yet again against Fenerbahce and nearly chucked a 2-goal lead away. Jack Butland got him through with 2 massive saves in Turkey and a couple of saves at Ibrox and then the penalty shootout. So for that reason, part of me thinks stick with him for the big occasion, but I just don't think you can trust him right now. And if it happened again on Thursday, fingers would rightly be pointed at Barry Ferguson for standing by him. I just think if push comes to shove, well, what a massive decision, by the way. What a massive decision.
It might well be the biggest conversation that Barry Ferguson has had to have with Alan McGregor since Boozegate.
Keith Curry. And who's getting the 2 fingers? Jack Butland. Honest. I think they will change their minds on this a couple of times in the next 3 or 4 days before having to make the call.
I think you might be right. I think they'll agonise over this. I think they'll also need to sit him down, Butland I'm talking about, and kind of look into his eyes a little bit and just see where his head's at. Because, you know, if they have any chance of coming through the 2 legs of this tie, they're going to need him in top form. They can't have him throwing ones into the back of his net. These errors have become too frequent and too costly.
They're not even just missing crosses. They're not goalkeeping errors that you see up and down the country every week. They're basic shots that are coming off his chest. That one yesterday, that's not a difficult save. I thought it must have taken a deflection, but I've watched every angle of the replay. It doesn't take a deflection. Looking for excuses for him because they're such simple mistakes. And to have made
decision making as well. Fraser, look at the penalty at St Mirren when he came charging off his line.
Forgot about that one. And then there's a punch against Manchester United.
Throwing one in at Old Trafford, yep.
Or the catalogue, you know, there must be 7 or 8 this season. It's incredible. At the concentration levels, I don't know what's happened. I don't know what's happened there. But look, they will seriously have to watch on closely in training this week. And you're right, Alan McGregor deserves to have a major say in whether he plays on Thursday, but it'll come down to Barry Ferguson to put a name against that number 1 on Thursday night.
I'm going to throw another one at you, Fraser, right? Because, right, obviously Barry Ferguson and his staff are effectively auditioning for the job, right? Where are you on that? Do you think that they should be considered serious candidates? Do you think that a result like that at the weekend means that they're removed from the running if they ever were? Where are you on that? And then I'm going to give you my thoughts.
My thoughts are they're a strong 4. I think each of them. Sorry, that's a wee bit ignorant to Sammy Shirai, isn't it? He's part of it. So a strong 5. The 4 that have come in all have their own features. You know, Barry Ferguson is maybe the Steven Gerrard type disciplinarian, the front man who absolutely will install these standards that we keep hearing about. Tell you what the standard is right now at Ibrox. It's getting beat. That is standard. And that's what can go on. And then you got Dodds and McCann who have managed top level and bring their own wee facets, and McGregor taking care of the goalies. Look, I think it's quite a strong foursome, but I'm not convinced it's right for Rangers. I think if this is an addition, they've had 7 games. They've been bad in 5 of them. They've been shocking in 3 of them. I think they've gone backwards in the last couple of months in performances, and that's incredible to say. And yet on top of that, they've been absolutely outstanding away to Fenerbahce and Celtic. It's the most, I don't feel like to say, it's such a schizophrenic Rangers team right now. I cannot understand what's going on with them. But to answer your question, the bottom line is, right, this is a bang average Rangers team. They've got a goalie who's short of confidence, a back line where I only truly rate John Souttar, and he's getting dragged down by those round about him. A midfield that can look brilliant one week, and those games are referred to, and then awful against at home to St Mirren or Motherwell or Queen's Park. And then up front, Cyril Dessers again yesterday, a striker that you cannot have a striker that needs 10 attempts as he did at Dundee to hit the back of the net. Now, we had 3 glorious chances in the first half yesterday, right, at 1-0 to go in level at half-time. The first one, after a beautiful move involving Vaclav Černý and James Tavernier, I'll give Jordan Smith credit for saving it well, getting his angles right. But then twice he's put through Dessers by Černý and then Hamza Gamani, and he lashes completely uncontrolled shots, firstly over the bar and then wildly wide and over. It's just, you can't have that with a number 9. There's no clinical edge to him at all.
I've written a column for tomorrow, and I've mentioned Dessers as well, and I've said that he's the kind of number 9 that would get any manager the sack, because and I think that Barry Ferguson really likes him as a guy, and as a worker, and as even, I'm going to say it, a finisher on the training pitch. I think he displays qualities behind the scenes that he doesn't maybe display on match days. But that, at the end of the day, is going to be a massive pitfall. If you've got a number 9 who's leading your line, he's got to be able to take chances.
Yeah,
and the more he misses, the more pressure mounts on the team and on Barry Ferguson. Now, I'm going to float this idea.
Can I just quickly say, I was watching Sports Scene back earlier, right? And the second of those chances when he smashes it over the bar, the Sports Scene camera picks up John Souttar's reaction at the other end of the park.
Looked as if he was having a fit.
Oh, no wonder. That just sums up what Cyril Dessers' misses are doing to the rest of the team. When you need him to dig you out a hole, he's not doing it. And John Souttar, Mr. Nice Guy, Mr. Mild-mannered John Souttar. Oh my word, his reaction was brilliant.
Well, my views now, I wonder, Fraser, and humour me here, I wonder if a result like that on Sunday helps to simplify the situation where Barry Ferguson and his backroom team are concerned in terms of, are they candidates? Should they be considered candidates? Or should they be judged on a game-by-game basis and held as hostages to fate, hostages to fortune, whether or not the team turns up, whether they're professional enough to turn up, whether or not Butland throws one into the back of his own net? Should that be a determination for whether or not they're the right guys? So I actually think it's crystallising a little bit, and I think you either think you've seen enough to be convinced that they're the right coaching team for Rangers, or you've seen enough to think that they're not and you want somebody else. And I have to say, I think I've seen enough from this coaching team and from Barry Ferguson. I think he looks made for the job. I think you're right about the qualities and strengths of his backroom team. I'd be inclined now, and you know, I'm saying it's regardless of results. It can't be regardless of results, especially not when you've got Bilbao coming up this Thursday night. But I'm inclined more and more to think you've got to. What have you seen? Have you seen an improvement? Some will argue yes. Others will argue no. But I think that Barry Ferguson and his team, they at least know what Rangers require, what is required in order to make Rangers competitive. We've talked about them as rendering themselves as an irrelevance in the domestic scene over the last while. These guys understand what it took and what was required to make them competitive previously, and I think they're trying to move the club back towards that. It's not Rangers will look forward to this summer and American owners coming in and they'll think it's a rebuild or it's a revolution. Do you know what? It's gone past that. It's now got to the point that Rangers are a restoration job, needing to happen. And if you're going to restore something, well, you need to know in your head what it is that you're trying to restore it to, what it was that it looked like before. And I think that these guys are ideally placed for that. And I think that Saturday's game there, the 2-0 for Hibs, it just underlines what a mess has been made of the squad building and how far Rangers have been allowed to drift away from the Rangers that Barry Ferguson, Neil McCann, Billy Dodds and Alan McGregor remember. Yeah. So that's the way that I'm starting to look at it. Funny that, isn't it? You look at that result, dreadful result. That's 5 home games in the bounce. But I wonder if it might just make the issue less grey, more black and white.
It's an interesting take. It's to lose his first 3 games at Ibrox, I struggle to see him coming back for that. You're totally right. What's going on in Barry Ferguson's head is something completely different to what is going on in the park. Mm-hmm. You're totally right. He knows what needs to happen. He knows what should be happening. It just doesn't seem to be getting through to these players, and that's not all his fault. He's been dealt this hand. He's been dealt these players. I go back to it. They're bang average. I won't hear anything else about Rangers. They're bang average. Right. That Hibs team that went through yesterday know what they're doing. They're a better team. From back to front, they're a better team. Clinical up top when the chances came along. And I loved watching them defend. They went to Ibrox yesterday and enjoyed defending their box. I love watching that. They were so confident in what they were doing. Rocky Bashiri, who couldn't get a game at the start of the season, throwing himself in front of everything. Jack Iredale, again, who came in at the start of this 16-game unbeaten run. Fantastic. So
I like him, by the way. I think he's a cracker.
Brilliant. He's been great signing for Bolton. Brilliant signing. But not to go back to it, I just think Barry Ferguson knows exactly what's needed. You're right. and he talks about standards. Whether whoever comes in needs to sign players that are capable of taking that onto the pitch, because at the moment you've maybe got 3 or 4 that would do better surrounded by better players, but right now nobody's doing it for him. See, if you based it on the Celtic and Fenerbahce away, you'd give him the job in a heartbeat, because those 2 performances were incredible. The other 5, yesterday, they fell behind because of Jack Butland-Towler. That's not Barry Ferguson's fault. But then they couldn't, and then, right, they had 3 chances to get back into it through Dessers, blew them all. Again, can't really blame the manager unless he takes Dessers out of the team and starts Igamani or perhaps Danilo through the middle. But in the second half, they had nothing. They came back out for half-time, and Barry Ferguson referred to it after the match. They had nothing. If anything, Hibs could have stretched their lead further than just 2-0. Dundee last week, I was at that game as well. I thought Rangers were rotten for 75 minutes. Defensively, an absolute disaster. And I saw them home at Fenerbahce. Thought they're very lucky to get through. They threw away that 2-goal lead and were absolutely...
I actually thought they started that game quite well, Fraser.
Well,
I thought they started the Fenerbahce game fine at home.
And then fell away.
And the bottle went.
As soon as the first goal went in, their bottle crashed. You're right. And it was a long afternoon. They just managed to squeeze through that one. Kilmarnock in his first game again fell behind. I don't understand the slow starts. Motherwell, slow start at home to Motherwell. Yeah, it can't be a coincidence.
No, but I tell you, I think it speaks to the character of some of the guys that he's got, and imagine having to rely on that.
Well, the weird thing is that Cyril Dessers' his character, because he will always bounce back for these misses, but his character for me isn't enough, because he can't rely on him. So one guy that does have character, he can't rely on his quality.
I tell you,
it's a real mess.
Just to leave it, the pictures that you saw, and obviously you were speaking to Barry Ferguson after the game, Fraser, that to me is a man that was hurting, really, really hurting, big time. And I wonder how many players inside that dressing room were taking it just as badly as him. And that might point to the real problem that whether it's Barry Ferguson or anybody else that comes into that position is going to have next season. The players don't care.
Aye, there will be some. It's going to be an expensive overhaul again. Whether they can afford that, that's a big question. But I can't believe we're talking about another clear out in the summer.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Anyways, and by the way, the Rangers fans, they might probably be feeling really low right now. I'm sure Barry Ferguson is. But there's Thursday night to come. And you know what happens on Thursday nights? Strange things. We'll be building up to that over the course of the next few days as well.
Let's leave it at that. See if they pull off another result on Thursday. Rather than patting in the back, I think it'd be pointing fingers, saying why and how. Where is this domestically? I think it would. If I was a Rangers fan, that would make me angrier.
Yeah, where's your professional pride?
Yeah.
Okay, Fraser. Well, listen, thanks for joining us. Thanks everybody back home for tuning in, and thanks for all your comments. And we'll be back tomorrow night from 6 o'clock, and we'll do it all over again. Cheers.
Cheers.